one. Welcome to Dispatches from the Narrative Wars. This is the Patreon only show where I interview whoever the hell I want to talk about whatever the fuck we're gonna. Joining me right now is my good friend Jason Carney. We miss him dearly on Slow News Day live streams. That's what this is all about. The more people that get hip to this Patreon, the sooner I can get the internet speed to restream with this gentleman right here. Jason, how's it going, man?
It's going. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Weird world we live in. I just did a live stream about Elizabeth Warren being cornered into talking about Israel for once.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who she sounds like?
Could it be Hillary Rodham?
If there's a further right than that, she's right up there with Ben Shapiro. She really is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's swinging for the fences. She's putting herself up there with that inept moron who babbles and thinks it's intellect.
It sounds like babble. She really is like, well, I think the state of Israel has the right to defend itself, and they're in a very dangerous place there in the Middle East, and it's a very hostile territory. And so if Hamas is gonna load rockets and put them next to hospitals and Gaza should be fucking, no longer an open air prison. But according to Elizabeth Warren, not only is the ongoing apartheid state fine, the open state of genocide fine, but settlements are downright dandy too. So hopefully more and more people wake up to the what I've got a great term for it, performative wokeness that is Elizabeth Warren. Huh?
Let me stress unequivocally, and I had a great uncle die in the camps in Germany. I'm Jewish heritage. An attack on the policies and the apartheid state that is currently the Israeli government and what they're doing to the Palestinians is not anti-Semitic. Now, calling it and saying it for any reason it has to do with the fact that they're Jews or the fact that they're this or the fact that that's when we start diving into racism, bigotry, and all those other fun things that people like to do against people like ourselves. Policy and strictly policy and saying why it's wrong and saying why holding down and subjugating a group of people is wrong and why taking rockets to stone throwers is wrong and why annexing parts of the territory that isn't rightfully Israel's is wrong, etc., etc. That's not anti-Semitism. And I don't know if Elizabeth Warren is famously like the Democrats in the late 90s, in which they looked at every possible poll before making a decision. But I think the lack of nuance and understanding of the etymology of anti-Semitism is really throwing her, if it's that far out like Ben Shapiro, stop calling yourself a progressive.
Here, I'll try and find the quote, but keep going on. Keep that up.
I look at the American people are not, and it's not their fault, they're ignorant when it comes to understanding politics, doublespeak, when it comes to actual definitions that are being slung around. If you use anti-Semitism, that's everything that has to do with Israel policy, Israel stances on positions, etc., then you're going to have a whole lot of people with a backbone who are going to be silenced by those without a backbone when it comes to, and I mean this strictly on Israel, the government of Israel's policies. I don't mean this toward its people. I don't mean it toward any individual Jewish person in the world. I mean this strictly off Israeli policy. You're going to scare people into silence and make anybody who has the cojones to speak up against Israeli policy a racist caricature.
Let me read a couple of these quotes
to
you here real quick, man.
Okay.
And I wasn't even kidding. I think the she was questioned by she finally she has office hours, a thing she routinely does at her Massachusetts Senate office. You know, constituents come in, they can ask her questions. This guy identified himself as a supporter of hers and asked her why she voted recently to give $225 million to the Iron Dome. And she says, and this is where I was pulling the fucking Shapiro from, I think the vote was right, and I'll tell you why I think the vote was right. America has a very special relationship with Israel. Israel lives in a very dangerous part of the world, a part of the world where there aren't many liberal democracies and democracies that are controlled by rule of law, and we very much need an ally in that part of the world.
Okay, give me 30 seconds on that one. There is nobody other than Nazi, fascist, racist scum that in this country that doesn't believe that Israel has a right to defend itself. I strongly support the state of Israel defending itself. What I don't support is going on into Gaza and the West Bank and taking on rock throwers with M16s, with AR-15s, with M4s, with rockets, etc. That's the difference. Okay, Israel has every right. I am of that land has a very special importance to me and my family. I fully embrace, support, cheer like a madman that Israel has a right to defend itself. But what point does it stop becoming defending yourself and become systemic oppression, apartheid, etc.? That's policy. That's policy argument. That is not anti-Semitism. Or excuse me, that's not. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, no, but that's the narrative war, is that any criticism of a political movement that is full blown supportive of apartheid and genocide and has a sort of domination slash end times theory that it's wrapped itself around, is a, you know,
Can I follow that up
threat
with
to
something?
its immediate neighbors and and a nuclear armed as well. Let's
Right.
not forget that.
Right. I want to follow it up. I believe the United States and Israel share a friendship, and I value that friendship. But isn't it in any friendship the duty of one's friend to call out another friend who's doing something messed up and saying, "Bro, whoa, listen, come here. You're doing this wrong. What the hell are you doing? What the hell are
$38
you thinking?" That's what real friendship is.
a
But that's the
year.
thing. That's what real friendship is. It's watching each other's back and trying to make each other better, not fund each other money for military fucking adventures and antagonisms with Iran and other countries in the Middle East, further drawing more American troops into the region for a longer, protracted period of time with no end goal. I'm curious how that works. That's not friendship to me. That's like the old Looney Tunes cartoon with the little Chihuahua dog and the big bulldog behind him. And the little Chihuahua thought he was just a badass. He could talk smack to anybody. He could do anything he wanted because he had this big bulldog behind him. That's what it reminds me of. Friends, that's not friendship. That's enabling.
So she had a constituent ask her about settlements and said, "Do you think that putting a hold on new settlements should be a condition before Israel receives more money?" And immediately, oh, I don't think we should go that far. There's no question whether we should go that far. Right. Uh, and it's not like this is something people forget, but it's not like this is new information. Like shit's up on her website that is
Mm-hmm.
it is a moral imperative to support and defend Israel. Um,
I believe it's supporting and defending Israel as well. And I believe it's a moral imperative. I don't believe it's a support and defend bad, horrible decisions that kills innocent people. That's not supporting and defending. That's enabling.
well, what it is it's not just enabling, but it is echoing every far right Zionist from Ben Shapiro to Hillary Clinton to Benjamin Netanyahu with that that whole like right to defend itself. And you said it, man. You have to literally be opposed. You have to think that the state of Israel needs to be wiped from the face of the earth before you don't think that Israel has a right to defend itself. You know, now there's a legitimate argument on whether or not they should be allowed to have nuclear weapons or indiscriminately kill Palestinians. But we were going to talk about Andrew Yang.
Hey, this Elizabeth Warren thing is kind of juicy as well, my friend. You opened a can of worms there.
It's mind-boggling that either A, this doesn't matter to anyone who wants to vote, or the propaganda that we are Israel's only friend in a very hostile neighborhood, and that it's our duty to stand up to bullies that lob rocks over a fence and in turn get bullets.
My thought process is, and this is something that's really funny, if you don't have an argument, there's a couple of different tactics that you can take, and anybody who debates can back me up on this, and you probably run into this. If you don't have a solid argument against a particular subject, you can go directly into name calling. You can get belligerent, you can get stupid, and totally throw the debate off the rails. There's another tactic in which you can introduce a totally different scenario under totally different circumstances and argue. There's another argument in which, or there's another debate tactic in which you ask a bunch of questions all at one time in a blitzkrieg type fashion, and you confuse and totally lose the audience that's listening to it. I'm intrigued by this particular line of argument and rationale used by calling everyone, and I believe this falls into the second one where you change the subject, anti-Semitic. Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party is a dangerous and fascistic far-right party in the state of Israel. Because of this, I adamantly oppose Benjamin Netanyahu and all members of Likud. I am not a supporter of that particular party, but I love Israel. I love the people of Israel, and I want to see Israel flourish for another 1,000 years without any issues. Because of this, I could be labeled as anti-Semitic.
Of course.
What sense does that make? Am I a self-loathing Jew?
I watched somebody call Mike from the Humanist Report a homophobe. So, I mean, yeah. People every day are telling Talib Kweli that he's anti-black and anti-reparations because he doesn't support the particular ADOS movement. Yeah.
Huh.
And Talib Kweli has myriad reasons, all of which are, if not 100% valid, certainly worth a little bit more examination. Anywho,
no, I like that you brought that up. We need, one thing I've been kind of pounding the drums on lately, especially on Twitter, is this position of throwing people in absolutist camps. We go out and we, especially amongst progressives on the left, I'm really focused on them because I can give a shit about centrists and Republicans. They can go cannibalize each other for all I care. But what I'm seeing on the left, especially amongst, like I brought up earlier, the Tulsi and the Sanders groups, are two groups that should be so tight-knit and getting each other's backs. To see them cannibalizing one another is absolutely vile and disgusting. And then to see everybody else pile on to that is astounding and amazing. And what I've been trying to do is beat the drum of the real progressives out there, the real Marxists, the real individuals. Stop focusing on this presidential bullshit and start getting with workers. Start getting with people. Start focusing on as you've always said, Steve, the local level. I think we're going to constantly chase our own tails when it comes to this nonsense that's politics in this country.
Look,
because these arguments are getting dumber and dumber, and having people like Ben Shapiro held up, and the Young Turks held up, and the Humanist Report held up, and all these other nonsense bullshit fucking corporatized. And I don't care what anybody says, they're corporatized. They're making far more money than any of us will see in a lifetime. And having these morons be able to be the quote-unquote voice of a movement that doesn't require corporatization. They're supposed to represent us. They're supposed to, be the trendsetters and the news proponents of progressives on the left. I really think we need to get back to focusing on the workers of this country.
Well,
I
let's
think we
let's
need to
let's
focus.
let's
My
let's
bad.
break that. Let's
So
break
much anger
that
right
down a
now.
second. Let's break that down a second, because you just fucking you got it, and I don't know if you know that you realize that you got it. But these are let's look at the concept of what a social media influencer is, or what a if not cult of personality, certainly like a type of progressive show, not an individual, because there's a very successful template on how to do a lefty horse race show. And there's people that go outside of that to varying degrees here or there. God damn it, man. I hope that doesn't, for whatever reason, YouTube is giving me notifications on my laptop, and I can't remember how to make it stop. Anywho, um, what we have is a history of intelligence community influence in media. Certainly from the inception of television into, well, all forms of film, news, fucking commercials, all that shit. It happens in independent YouTube, alternative media. um we've got everybody that does a show that has an allowable show, that has a certain amount of censorship, but could certainly be receiving more. um and they don't receive more. The reason they don't receive more is because what they're doing is they're using pretty much 100% establishment talking points. Graham Elwood is doing that a little bit less, and he's getting censored harder. He is.
You're talking to the wrong guy, literally, who I've never stayed within the parameters with people of the 99%. And immediately, as soon as I started getting it back up and off the ground, when it hit over 11,000 people, we got shut down from being able to do any live cast, because all I did was put a picture up that was the black and white United States flag, one strip being pulled away, and a Nazi flag under it.
Yeah. No, I know.
Which Facebook came back to me and said it didn't violate terms of service or community standards, but I still cannot do a single live cast.
Yeah. Yeah. You should do it from Slow News Day's Facebook page.
We're going to talk about that. Yeah, that would probably be more. Because I mean, at this point, it's like you said. It's exactly like you said. If you veer off the establishment's talking points and you start talking like a real human being who actually cares about real human beings and not corporations and not the wealthy and not the political class, then all of a sudden you're some lunatic fringe weirdo who needs to be shut down.
Well, and that's just the thing. Like, if you're pointing your finger at Rachel Maddow, you're pointing your finger at Chris Cuomo, you've got your audience chanting fucking Fredo. Like, you can operate more with in the sphere, because you're narrative driven. Far outside of the box as like Jimmy Dore is gone or Graham Elwood is gone. To a very lesser degree, Jamarl Thomas, because he'll talk about them aliens. But you
so I got to throw some tinfoil hat in there and leave me alone.
You got to get a little bit more. Here's stuff we can prove about geopolitical conspiracy, and he backs off.
No, what I find amazing is people, the 99%, haven't in once in 4 years have to retract anything that was put up. We haven't had one single thing in which we've had to apologize for. We haven't had one simple, any piece that goes up as anything other than verifiable truth. And at the end of the day, we don't dive into conspiracy theories. We don't throw anything weird out there. We simply talk about the politicians and policies and the movements, etc., and let people have a debate amongst themselves. We give them the facts. They can debate until their heads, explode, and we go from there. And yet, Facebook finds the need to censor us. This has been over 2 weeks now, and I keep trying once a day to do a live cast.
Well,
and this is what it's like for everybody.
It's like typical for that page where you'll get a lot of subscribers and then you'll do something like not necessarily out of bounds and they'll shut you down. And then like 6 or 7 weeks go by, your audience forgets that you routinely post. And when you start posting again, it's like 8% of what. Yeah. This is a frequent, but oh shit. How is that? The meeting will end. Oh my god, this is the first time this happened.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh well. Anywho, I will be conducting these from Action for Assange's Zoom from now on, I guess.
Beautiful. There's not a better man to do it.
I've never had a time one. Maybe this is brand new for September 1st. Bummer. Anywho, for the remaining several minutes, let's get into this whole Andrew Yang is a fucking dickhole thing.
You know what? It's gone beyond just Yang being a dickhole. There's an individual on Twitter that I like to have a discussion with sometimes. He seems to be a quote unquote reasonable Yang supporter, but a vast majority, I don't want to generalize a whole group of people because I find that kind of is a ignorant way to do things, but there's a disproportionately large amount of the quote unquote Yang gang that exists that makes me wonder, were they voting for Libertarian in 2016 and decided that they want to jump aboard with this Democratic candidate? UBI is a great idea that needs to be at the very minimum $3,000 a month. Very minimum. Super minimum. Because even in California alone, you couldn't survive off $3,000 a month. You might be able to do it in Iowa. You might be able to do it in Wyoming. You might be able to do it in Mississippi. But in California, Texas, New York, bigger, larger populations that are the epicenter of commerce, or the epicenter of entertainment, or the epicenter of energy. You're not going to be able to survive on 3,000.
There's value-added tax.
What's that?
Value-added tax.
Oh, for sure.
And then he said on Dave Rubin's show that it's how you get rid of the social safety net.
That's what I was just going to bring up. This is the first step in trying to eliminate the safety net programs. This is going to eliminate any form of welfare. This is going to eliminate any form of Social Security. This is going to eliminate any form of assistance for $1,000 freaking a month.
That's
not going to cover anything.
Pure technocratic fucking new metric on slavery.
Mm-hmm. Slavery with a couple extra steps.
And he knows, man. He knows that that there's automation that is going to take place. He knows that it's going to eliminate X amount percent.
Everybody knows that.
But instead of saying we as human beings need to redefine work, we need to redefine value, we need to redefine what generates income, or if we even need income, we don't.
No.
What we need is a collective shift towards work as something you do to make your communities and your planet sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And your reward for that is that you get to live as a free human being and try not to kill each other.
Yeah. The home is what you make it. The food is what you make it. It's not that complex of I heard somebody, and it was a podcast, and I don't mean to bring this up, but it's Matt D'Elia is confused, and he had this guy on there who talked about if everybody had stopped paying their mortgage on January 1st, I believe it is, 2020, and they did that for 2 months, the 60 days, because I think it's after 60 days that they the banks start the process of foreclosure, excuse me. and did that. It could cripple the American economy for Q1 in January of 2020, and it would really show everybody on the face of the planet. There's no way banks could process if every American decided not to pay their mortgage.
Well, look,
There's
man,
no way
California,
every cop could enforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it would show every American that the economy is just an imaginary form of bondage that keeps you in your place, doesn't allow you to expand, doesn't allow you to sleep comfortably, doesn't allow you to eat, take medication, what have you. It keeps you in a sense of slavery.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's not just that though. Like, he said some very fucked up shit about Julian Assange.
Oh, yeah.
And went on to say some incredibly fucked up things about, once again, Israel and Palestine. I'm going to try to at least quote one of those while or even play it. Yang Israel. Here is, if this will load up, what he said. And
so in terms of the money we're giving to an ally like Israel, my first instinct would be like, why would we reduce it? And so certainly if I communicated something else, like that's not the idea at all. There are certain relationships we have that, to me, we need to rebuild and strengthen. And I would suggest that our relationship with Israel is one of them.
And what about the Arabs?
You'd have to look at it in a case by case and say, like, what's happening in terms of our bilateral relationship with a particular party. But my zeal is to try and build strong alliances and partnerships. If someone's been working with us for a long time, they should feel like they're being rewarded for that, frankly. And then if someone has an interest in working with us, we should be open to rewarding that too. But for each country, like, you have to look at what's going on at that time and what the lead-in has been.
So when it comes to land in Israel that's being taken, even though it was granted to certain Palestinian families by the UN, how do you feel about constricting Israel almost to prevent that from happening, and constricting political influence by American leaders in Israel?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll answer it more generally, which is, like, my stance on this is that it's going to be hard for the United States to constrict, like, an ally or really just about any of its partners in a decision that they feel is central to them. And I don't think that's our priority. It's not that we're somehow giving people aid so that we can then twist their arm about things that that they find important.
yeah. We've got 2 minutes left. What's your immediate reaction to that? You are nowhere to be found. Okay. Well, there's Jay. I've got 2 minutes left on the meeting. I guess that was Jay's out time. Shit. Thanks for sticking around for a rough cut of dispatches from the narrative. Wow, that was wild. Thanks for hanging out.